So today is my birthday, and it is also exactly 1 year since I had my open heart surgery on my birthday. This video is really a video journal for me to share my experiences with open heart surgery. I am not a doctor. I am not involved in the medical profession whatsoever. So I am not here to give advice. I am simply sharing my experiences. Any questions or concerns that you have, you definitely should talk to your physicians about that. I really want to start kind of at the beginning and take you through my journey. As I said, this is kind of a journal for me. So I'm going to treat it that way and tell my story. I was born with a heart murmur, discovered right at birth, bicuspid aortic stenosis. My first memories are actually of EKGs, chest x-rays. Back in the day, it was probably 3 or 4. Remember the little suction cuppy things that they would put for the EKGs. And then I remember it was probably about 5 when I had a chest x-ray, and I remember the doctor telling me I was a very good girl because I was so still during the x-ray. Growing up, I didn't really have any idea that this was a bad thing. I was never on any medication. I didn't have to have surgeries. Really, the only consequence for me was more restricted activities. So I was pretty much just encouraged to read a lot. I was never kept from exercise that I remember, but I always had a standing, every year I had a doctor's note, kind of a standing note with the PE teachers in school that if I ever felt like I couldn't do something, that I had the right to sit out basically whenever I wanted to. But I was never told I couldn't do anything. I just was encouraged to read, stay quiet, stay as quiet as possible. It really wasn't until I was 15 that I kind of got the full extent of what was really going on with my heart. So I'd been seeing a cardiologist every year for checkups. And this particular year, when I was 15, was the year that my pediatric cardiologist was actually about to retire. After the sonogram, EKGs, kind of yearly physical checkup, he explained a little better what was actually happening with my valve, what it looked like, that instead of a Y valve, tricuspid, it was a bicuspid, which means it's just a line and it's fused on each end. So blood's not getting through that needs to be. At that point, he told me that if I ever decided to have children, I would probably die during labor. And he put it pretty much that bluntly. As you can imagine, being told that at the age of 15 is pretty traumatic. And especially because the doctor was retiring, I pretty much refused to see a cardiologist again. That was my last checkup for many, many years. I wound up getting married, and when my husband and I were talking about starting a family, I felt like I needed to check with a cardiologist to see what was going to happen. So I did. So I looked up a cardiologist in the yellow pages and went and he wound up doing a TEE, transesophageal echocardiogram, and said everything was fine, that there shouldn't be any problems, and there weren't. I had 2 beautiful children, 18 months apart, with absolutely no problems. And that was 17 years ago. So really, over the past, everything has been great. I've always had kind of a more sedentary lifestyle. My husband is a sports buff, soccer player, athlete, and I am a reader. And, I've always been very conscious of how hard I push my heart. So I never tried to get my heart rate very high, that kind of thing. Never run for any reason. But it really wasn't until about maybe 3 years ago that I started noticing a real drop in my energy levels. 2 Thanksgivings ago, before my surgery, the Thanksgiving right before my surgery, in 2018, I found that I couldn't put up our Christmas tree. I couldn't decorate the Christmas tree. And that was kind of a slap in the face almost to me, that I really had no energy to even hang one ornament on the Christmas tree. I just couldn't do anything. I just sat and watched as my kids did all the work. And it was a real struggle to do anything in life, to think practically. My legs and feet were swelling really badly, but I hadn't noticed it so much because I'm a teacher, so I walk on my feet a lot. So I just kind of was assuming, oh, I'm getting older, I walk a lot, that's totally normal. And it wasn't until I went to see the doctor that they said, no, this is not really normal, this is swelling. So after that Thanksgiving, I decided that things had changed for me health-wise, and I needed to check into this. So I didn't even bother seeing a primary care physician. I just went straight back to the cardiologist. And I went back to the same cardiologist I had seen before my kids were born. And everybody was shocked that I was there. Why are you here? What doctor told you to come? What made you just decide to come? And I kept telling everybody, I knew that something was different. I knew that there was something going on. And I was right. Listen to your body. So right before Christmas is when I saw the cardiologist for the first time. And then after several different tests and visits, another TEE, x-rays, echoes, sonograms, all of that stuff. And throughout those couple of months, of course, my energy level, fatigue, swelling just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And they sent me to a surgeon. So I saw the surgeon on March 18th, 2019. And he looked at the information from the cardiologist and said that, there were 3 signs of heart failure, and that based on the symptom that you were showing, he could tell you basically how long you had to live without treatment. And my symptoms meant a year or two tops. And at this point, I was having to use a motorized cart in the grocery store. I always had to have one of my children with me to help me shopping, grocery shopping, doing things. I could barely get laundry done or dishes done, just kind of normal. I was really relying on my kids a lot. Luckily, they're teenagers, so I was relying on them a lot to help me with things. So when the surgeon suggested that I have surgery to replace my aortic valve, I broke out into tears, sobbing. It's one of those things that is kind of in the back of your mind, for me, your whole life, but you never really let yourself stop to think about what that means, what that entails, how serious it is. And then when he said that, and that it had to be done now, man, that was tough. And it was funny because he said nobody had ever cried in his office. He said, I've never had this kind of reaction. And they had to rush around and try to find Kleenex for me. But I knew he was right, that it needed to be done sooner rather than later. I had hoped to have some time to kind of process and prepare, but, looking back, I think it's probably best that I didn't, that I just kind of had to jump in, because I think if I had a lot of time to dwell on it, that might have been worse. So he wanted to do it in 2 weeks, or within the next 2 weeks. So the nurse rattled off some dates that the doctor was available for the surgery. And as soon as she said my birthday, I jumped on it. And everybody thought I was crazy. But my thought was, I was born with this wonky heart, so I'm going to choose my birthday to fix it. Caused a little confusion in the hospital. So we spent 2 weeks doing insurance and, trying to get the payments for the hospital for the surgery that they wanted, the prepayments and x-rays and CT scans and heart caths and pre-op and tons and tons and tons, blood work, all that stuff. What was, I guess, kind of unusual about my circumstance is there is really nothing wrong with me physically except my heart, except that valve. I do not have high blood pressure. My blood pressure has always been very low, actually. I do not have cholesterol problems. I do not have diabetes. I do not smoke. I do not drink. Nothing's wrong. I have no comorbid issues going on. So it's just that heart, just that valve. I was really nervous about the surgery. I had never had any kind of surgery before. When I had my children, they were both very easy births. I didn't even have to have, anything there. It was just very easy. So I've never had done anything like that before. That I guess the closest I've come is maybe, getting a root canal. They kind of put you to sleep a little bit for that. So I was nervous about that, about going under for the surgery, what that would be like, how I would experience that. And it was really very, very similar to being in a dentist, and just kind of when they give you the laughing gas, that always makes me like sleepy. When I had the TEEs, that's not really one of those things where they totally put you under, but it always makes me go to sleep. So it really felt like that to me, just kind of whoosh, and I'm down, I'm out. And they kept me out for they kept me under anesthesia for about 36 hours, I believe. When I woke up, I noticed the board on the wall where the nurses have the information, and the first thing I noticed is it said Thursday instead of Wednesday. So that was a little, wow, I've been out that long kind of thing. My husband was there waiting for me. Was very groggy, tubes everywhere, and the aortic IV, the arterial IV, I mean, of course, the surgery, there's draining tubes on the bottom of the cut. They put a temporary pacemaker in after the surgery, when you are in the when I was in the cardiovascular ICU. The hospital was wonderful. I had such a great experience. I never felt like I was any kind of burden to the nurses. Anytime I asked, to be turned, or can you help me go to the bathroom, things like that. It never, I always felt kind of, oh, I hate to ask them that, but they never made me feel that way. It was always, they were so kind. It was really, they were wonderful. I did have some problems with the temporary pacemaker a few days after my surgery, so I was still in ICU. My surgery was Wednesday. I woke up Thursday, and then by Saturday, the temporary pacemaker wasn't working properly with my heart anymore. My heart should have been basically doing it on its own. They put the temporary pacemaker in because your heart is swollen after they do the surgery. And so sometimes they need that to monitor. But they actually wound up, I passed out multiple times, and so they wound up putting in a permanent pacemaker. So I have a pacemaker here. You can feel the sides of it. It's really crazy how that works. During the surgery, I found out that the plan was to do a titanium, a metal valve, but when the surgeon got in, it didn't fit, so they had to go with a pig valve. And while they were in there, the aortic arch burst, or so they had to fix that as well during the surgery. So I was very lucky that those things, that the arch kind of stayed until they got in to fix it. That's something that could have burst at any point and killed me pretty instantly, but it didn't. I was very blessed that it was taken care of at that point. I was in the hospital for almost 2 weeks. I think I was in ICU for about a week, and then in a regular room for less, I think about 5 days, maybe 4 or 5 days. I really probably would have stayed in a few more days, but I was so tired of being poked and prodded. I am not good with needles. I cried constantly every time they came to do blood or had to switch the IV. I was miserable. And I was really miserable. I wound up with a blood clot with the arterial IV caused a blood clot, and then all the IVs in my arms caused some, I forgot what they call it. It's like a pre-blood clot. So they were giving me injections for that in my stomach, and that was, oh gosh, blood thinner shots in my stomach were horrible. I finally cried and grumbled and complained enough. I guess they let me go home. But it was not great at home. As far as how uncomfortable I was and how difficult the recovery is. I had, my husband was luckily able to stay home for a few weeks after I came home from the hospital to help me. That was amazing. He was wonderful. He helped me shower and wash my hair and got up multiple times in the middle of the night to rub my back when I was, crying in pain, and help me turn over or move or get up out of bed. All of those things. He was absolutely wonderful. My children were troopers, and they did everything they could to help. Did the laundry, washed the dishes. Never complained about schoolwork. They were really amazing, but it was hard. It was hard to. It was a difficult recovery. Harder than I kind of expected. They had told me originally that I should be driving within probably 4 weeks, back to work within 6. I am a teacher, so I had the surgery at the beginning of April, and I had planned already on taking the rest of the school year off. I mean, there was only 2 months left of school. So I took those 2 months off, unpaid, of course. And then as a teacher, I naturally have the summer off. So I actually wound up having about 4.5 months total recovery time. And even that, I feel like, was probably really not enough. I did go back to work, of course, when school started in August of this year, 2019. But I really don't feel like I was fully recovered at all. I still don't know that I'm fully recovered a year later. I definitely was not driving within 4 weeks. You don't think about that steering wheel, how much you use your shoulders and your chest to steer. It's really difficult. So it really took me probably 6 to 8 weeks before I could drive. I found the anesthesia really had lasting effects on me. It made me very emotional. I cried about everything for months at the drop of a hat. I would just look at my husband and start crying and say, "You're so wonderful to me, and you're amazing. I can't believe you're doing these things for me." And I would just start bawling. The chest muscles, all of this took a good 9 months until I really started getting, feeling totally back in my chest. My pacemaker area, the muscles here were really sore for a long time, and I thought that there might be something wrong. In fact, I asked the cardiologist about it, and they just kind of shrugged it off. I don't know. And then I asked the surgeon. The surgeon said, no, that's totally normal because you have to cut the muscles to put the pacemaker in. And then, so there's a lot of nerve damage there. So this is totally normal that becomes very sore. Also, my scar, as you can see, the scar area, I have had a real hard time, even now, with itching. So I strongly suggest you invest in cortisone cream. I live by it every day. You just have to be very careful because I've stained a few shirts putting it on, and then it's still itching, so I scratch, and then I get cream all over the shirts, and then I ruin it. But my scar still itches a lot. And again, I asked my cardiologist. They said, scratch it. You can't really scratch a healing scar very well, but cortisone cream will help a lot. I still, a year later, am having still some soreness. I still cannot sleep on my left side. I can sleep on my right side, but I mainly sleep on my back still because my right side then gets too sore. My shoulder gets sore from sleeping on that one side all the time. So I still sleep on my back a lot. One of the things I found as I was recovering, and once I got probably past the 6th month mark, when I started trying to sleep on my side a little bit more, is that it felt as if my whole body was pulsing. So I can feel my heartbeat very prominently when I'm laying down, like in my neck especially. But then if I try to sleep on my side, it's throughout my whole body. So it's as if my whole body from my waist up is moving with my heartbeat, in and out, in and out. And that makes it really difficult to sleep if your body is pulsing like that. What else? So, oh, and the medication, I had some problems, some side effects with the medication that they gave me. They had given me Eliquis, blood thinners for the clots. But because I have a tissue heart and not a mechanical heart, the surgeon does not, that's not something they want you on blood thinners long term. So I only took the blood thinners for a few months until the blood clots went away. They put you on Lasix, diuretics, after the surgery because, with these valve issues, you tend to build up fluid. I did. I had, I think they took out about 5 liters of fluid, my husband said, during the surgery. So they put you on diuretics to get rid of the fluid, the excess fluid. And I found that I was having really weird responses to that medication. My arms were going numb and stuff. And so after about I don't know, 3 months maybe, I talked to the doctor and I told them I just couldn't do that. I was also put on metoprolol to help regulate my blood pressure after the surgery. But as I said, I've never really had a problem with my blood pressure. And I found I was having some unusual side effects with that as well. I was having double vision, dizziness, blurred vision. And as soon as I cut back on the metoprolol or cut it out completely, then those symptoms cut back and then eventually stopped. But as the cardiologist told me, those are really more just post-operative medications, that they're not necessarily things that they would expect you to be on permanently. So it was medicine that I stopped a little earlier than they probably would have naturally stopped me on, because I was having symptoms. So really the purpose of this video is to kind of share with you some things that I wish I had known before my surgery, like make sure you listen to your body. You, and talk to your doctors about what's going on with you and what you feel like you need. When I went to the cardiologist the first time about complaining about the metoprolol making me dizzy and giving me double vision and things like that, their first reaction was, that's not a common side effect of the medicine, and so you need to see a neurologist. And so on my own, I decided to stop the medication, which I do not recommend. Again, talk to your doctor. But I did stop the medication on my own, and the symptoms cleared up. And so the next time I went to the cardiologist, I told them what I had done, and they said, oh yeah, that's fine. We probably would have taken you off that medicine now anyway. So it all worked out. But make sure you listen to your body. Know that this is a very long recovery. As I said, I still am feeling pain in my chest. If I move my skin, it's really weird. I can feel the ridge where the bone is knitting together and healing. And it's still, I can feel that it's still healing in process. And it may not be, I may not feel 100% completely healed for another 6 months, another year. So even a year in, I'm still not 100. I still don't feel like I'm 100% there. The anesthesia can have numerous effects on people, and it can be long term. I didn't really expect that to follow me home. I thought after the surgery I would be done with that, but really, those effects of anesthesia continue for a long time. The itching, I was not prepared for the itching. Oh, sneezes. You have to be very careful with sneezes, because that is going to hurt like the dickens. So what I have found that really works is you rub the bridge of your nose up, just from the top down, rub your nose, and that will stop your sneeze. It really does work. I stopped sneezing for several months because it hurt so bad. It was almost unbearable to sneeze or cough or have hiccups. Crazy. My pacemaker, that was sore, and that's totally normal. You've got a lot of muscle damage, a lot of tissue damage that goes on with this kind of surgery. So there's going to be a lot of healing going on. One thing that the surgeon's PA told me in the hospital that doesn't seem like much, but it really did help me in my as I was trying to recover. She said that for every day that you are in the hospital, it takes 3 days to recover. Just the fact that you are in the hospital. So if you were in the hospital for 2 weeks, it's going to take you 6 weeks to recover from being in the hospital, plus the 6 months to a year that it takes to recover from the surgery itself, or from whatever has put you in the hospital to begin with. So just the act of being in the hospital itself takes so much out of you. So you can't expect this to be a quick recovery. However, I will say it is amazing to be able to go to the gym and walk on the treadmill and do more today than I did last week. That was something I had not experienced in my life. Every time I tried to do something like that before, it was always less and less and less. Now I can do more and more and more. And so that has been a real blessing. The energy that I have again to just be able to think and do things for my family and with my family is a blessing. So I'm really grateful that this happened at this time. I am so thankful that I had wonderful surgeon, wonderful staff, doctors and nurses to help guide me through this and to take care of me, and that I had the family to support me. And it's not a decision I regret at all. So thank you for listening to my story, if you stuck through it. And I hope you have the best experience you can have with your own surgery.